Hey, everybody, greetings and welcome to Conflict Radio. Today is Sunday, September 26th, 2021. And today on the show, we have Nathaniel Gillis joining us again. He is a religious demonologist and author. After living in a haunted house, Nathaniel spent 20 years researching what it was he encountered. Nathaniel is the founder of Preternatural, right? Am I saying that right? Goodness sakes, that's a word. All right, philosophy. Nathaniel has sought to redefine the nature of haunting phenomena, ghosts, and high strangeness. He's often quoted for his concept of the demonic. The reason they are playing by different rules is because they are playing a different game. Nathaniel, welcome so much to the show, man. How are you today?
Man, thank you for having me back on. I'm excited to be here. I'm doing good. We're going to dive into some nuances of the UFO abduction phenomenon that I know once we talk about them, it will unnerve a lot of people. But you know, that's the work. That's my research, and I'm excited to get into it with you guys tonight.
Yeah, you actually, I guess had another show you're going to be on tonight, and you canceled, and you reached out like, hey, does anybody want to do a show? And I was like, sure, let's do it, man. Let's go. I normally don't go on Sundays, but I mean, I have on a time or two. So let me give a shout out here to everybody in the chat. We've got Don M in the house, Mr. Fox. How you doing? David Gosling, thank you so much for the super chat earlier. Not Quite Human is here. Let's see, Mark.
I like that.
Yeah, not quite. Nasia is here. Arlene Adkinzel is in the house. Getaway Sounds says awesome. Stefan Gajda is here. Distorted Reality is in the house. Let's see who else we've got here. Sterling Skins. I don't know if I said that yet or not. Let's see. I'm scrolling. Okay, so it looks like let's see if anybody's commented since I started. All right, so we are ready to go. We're gonna do a show. Now, look, before we get started, I thought it was Saturday. B8 Bully says, no, it's not Saturday, man. It's Sunday. It might be Saturday where you are. I'm not really sure.
He sounds like me. Yeah.
All right. Say I Do Beach Weddings is here. Chuck Bam says hello. Look, I'm going to give, I talked to my moderators today, Not Quite Human, and we had a conversation before the show. So I want to let everybody know that from this point forward, we are going to clean up the chat. Okay. Like there's a lot of things, and you guys know what they are, that we can't talk about on YouTube. That said, it's also frowned upon to go off in the chat room about things that I guess we're not allowed to talk about. There are certain things, and that's just the reality of today. There are certain things that we're not allowed to talk about on this platform. So we are going to try to avoid that in the chat room as well. So everybody's been warned. I guess Chuck will delete what he needs to delete, and if we need to start issuing, I guess if we need to kick people out that aren't listening, we're going to kick people out that aren't listening. That's just the way it is. This is the platform that we're on. I understand that. Yeah, you got it, Mr. Fox. That's exactly it. So Not Quite Human is going to make that go away, because that is exactly what we're talking about here. So just to let everybody know, everybody's been warned. All right. So, I mean, it's just the way it is. I choose to use this platform. It's the platform I want to use. So we're going, no, Corn Pop's okay, Chuck. We can talk about Corn Pop. That's totally cool. Corn Pop's cool. All right. So just so everybody knows, that's what we got to do. So that's what we got to do. We're going to keep ourselves on this platform for as long as we can, and that's just what we need to do. Okay, Nathaniel,
Yes, sir.
Said you've been doing some research. You have some new stuff you're going to throw at us. The topic today is why ufology is destined to fail. So I'm going to give you the floor, man. It's all yours. What you finding out?
Well, I've been researching the UFO abduction phenomenon into the wee hours of the morning, and it's taken a tremendous amount of me. Like this stuff is dark, it's heavy. And so, you know, I've been researching how this otherness has been interacting with mankind. And I came across, I'm still, by the way, I'm still in Betty Luca's abduction accounts, Betty and Bob Luca's abduction accounts. And I was reading, when I was on my way to that Paracon last weekend, I was reading about their abduction accounts. Now, for all the listeners out there, I would invite you to imagine you're experiencing what Betty did. So for all of you that are listening, I want you to imagine that you're walking into your bedroom at nighttime and you see maybe your wife or your husband, you see them on the bed like Betty did with Bob, and he's putting his socks on his feet. And suddenly his body drifts into suspended animation. And she watches as his apparition is pulled out of his body, and it is screaming as it's running towards her. Number one, how in the heck do they have the capabilities to make ghosts out of living people? That's what we're dealing with here. Betty Luca literally witnessed as her husband was placed into suspended animation. In his ghost, his apparition, his soul was peeled out of his body to the point where she said, I saw him in two places at once. So,
All right.
So we got to scrap everything we've been thinking about ufology, because this is transcendent and it's completely different. I'm done. That's wild.
All right. So how is that even possible?
I don't know. We don't know. We don't know.
I mean, it's obviously some kind of, I guess, astro traveling thing, right? Where the
yeah, to peel the soul out of the body, to put the body in suspended animation, to basically press pause, and then this is what I believe an abduction really is. I don't just believe that it's a physical abduction. But I lean towards what Ray Fowler said, that this is something to do with death, in a sense. It's something to do with near-death experiences and out-of-body experiences. But what was fascinating to me is that they have what I call the evidential interest in touching that potentiality in us, in our species, that portion of us that we are ignorant of. Even atheists and people that are materialistic, and people that believe that there's nothing after death. These entities not only believe that's wrong, but they're relying on our ignorance. It's amazing to me. But I want to establish that point tonight, that they're not just abducting the body, but they have the capability and the ability to pull the soul out. Even to the point where we have abductees that are watching themselves leave their bodies during the abduction. So I think that as a field, ufology has to scrap the nuts and bolts concept. Obviously, there are nuts and bolts UFOs. But my God, guys, we got to realize something is going on here that transcends the microcosm of physicality. I mean, how do you protect the soul?
Well, it sounds to me like you're starting to get on board with the idea that these craft are piloted by demonic creatures or fallen angels.
Consciousness, and this gets interesting too. Wouldn't you know that there are abductees who are being taught maneuvers in ships during their abductions, and then when they get back into their body, they live and die, but they never flew the ship again. You follow me? They never flew the ship, even though they were being trained to. So I want to introduce a theory for all of us researchers, everybody who's listening, to think about. I do not believe they were educating muscle memory. I believe they were educating consciousness to fly the craft. Why? Because the body dies and they never flew the ship again. So what I'm leaning more towards is that these entities are recruiting ghosts. They're teaching that ghostly aspect of our existence, how to fly ships. It's an amazing phenomenon, but we got to, it's larger than nuts and bolts. This has everything to do with being disincarnate and how consciousness survives the bodily death.
Well, I mean, that could explain the physics behind the speeds and the maneuverability of the objects that,
Correct.
If it's, because you always hear like, oh, a human body could never withstand the G-forces, of this craft. That would explain how they're piloted and the people are survived if they're not actual physical bodies piloting the things, right?
Correct.
And the grays, we kind of figured out that the grays are probably synthetic beings that are AI, right?
Yeah, absolutely. They're organic, but it is an almost like an AI experience. They're put their consciousness into these beings. It's like a skin suit. Your ancient Near East scholars would call that an exterior soul. But I think that when you're mentioning these crafts, I think it's also beneficial for us to understand what Ezekiel was talking about with what's called the Ezekiel's wheel, like, the wheel within the wheel. He mentioned something, and I'm not trying to get religious. I do shows and people comment, they don't read and they say, you know what, Nathaniel, you lost me once you got religious. I'm not being religious now. I'm just giving you ancient beliefs about this phenomenon. This is not salvific stuff. I'm not teaching doctrine. I'm just expressing what our ancient ancestors believed. But in the book of Ezekiel, he's literally talks about a wheel. Now, one thing that's very important, and he slides this out there in front of us as if he's just, mentioning it in passing, but I caught it. We have to catch it. He says that the spirit of the creature was in the wheel. In other words, the consciousness was operating that UFO. The consciousness of the creature was not just in the creature that we see, but it was in the ship as well. And this gets back to the idea that they're training consciousness how to fly ships.
All right. So what happens to the body when the consciousness is removed and put into the ship?
We don't know. This is new dimensions of thought. Maybe it dies. Maybe. I guarantee you that there are people that have been abducted that we think are dead, and they're not. These entities have captured their souls. Now, the people say, okay, yeah, you don't really have any proof. Well, then I'll say, okay, then forget all of your UFO abduction literature, right? Just forget all, because that's what this entire program talks about. And so whatever's going on right now in modernity, we need to wake up and realize that this is not just nuts and bolts. This has everything to do with the soul, how it exists out of the body, and how they're recruiting, harvesting it for their purposes. It's troubling to me because the title of the program is why ufology is destined to fail. Well, I would say this, that they're asking the wrong questions, trying to get the right answers. Number one, and number two, we're not asking the real in-depth questions here. If they're abducting consciousness out of our bodies, and we're looking at nuts and bolts and celebrating each other and high-fiving our own butts because we have burnt foliage, right? We have a landing strip. I saw these imprints in the dirt. No. We need to start asking some serious questions here about our existential worldview. You following me? Because if they're pulling our souls out of our bodies, they are an absolute threat.
Well, that would explain how people say they're brought through the roof or brought through the wall.
That's Hopkins' work. Mm-hmm.
Let me ask you this. Don M. says, what about marks left on abductees' bodies?
Yes. So I do believe that there are two kinds of scoop marks, or what our ancestors would call devil's marks. I do believe that they are doing physical abductions. Like I said, I'm not abandoning that theory at all.
Yeah, it's like they're doing both then, right?
Correct. Now, what Bob Luca, again, man, this is some stuff, man. We're going to get some serious research. Probably research that a lot of ufologists research. They don't even want to touch this stuff. Matter of fact, there are people right now in the movement that are absolutely doctoring the data. because they don't want people to hear about the negative experiences. That's one thing I want to name drop Geraldine Orozco. She is a goddess. I respect her work highly. Anybody that's listening, you've got to follow her stuff. She's a beast.
Yeah, we've had her on a couple times. She's an amazing guest to talk to. She's been through some of the craziest experiences that I think I've ever heard personally. And she's mentioned on the program before that she's actually been on craft where they were conducting satanic rituals, that the occupants were conducting satanic rituals.
Yes, sir. And I believe that's the case. I do believe, again, if you guys follow my work, I've done 100 shows in the last year or two, and just look me up on YouTube, guys, you'll see that I mark that behavioral pattern throughout all of history. These are necromancers. These entities, according to scholars, they were the first midwives, hello, UFO abduction phenomenon, and they were the first exorcists. And but anyways, dealing with this concept of where these scars come from, I will remind everybody that Bob Luca watched his wife get peeled out of her body during an abduction. Betty Luca, which is Bob's wife, was watching her soul leave her body as she's going into a ship. Now, you're right. This does explain how they're moving people through walls. See, it wasn't that they're moving physical objects through a wall. You're dealing with an apparition. The apparitional portion of us that they're pulling out, right? Obviously, anybody that studies hauntology will understand that apparitions can materialize and dematerialize, right? They can walk through walls. Whatever that portion of us is what they're pulling out of us during some of these abductions. But anyway, so Bob Luca said that Betty's soul left her body. Now, what's interesting, guys, is that during the abduction, Betty Luca remembers it. She is seeing the abduction in real time, but her eyes are in her body back in bed, right? So it's almost like they stretched her soul into this dimension that they exist in. So without ears, she's hearing, right? Without eyes, she's seeing. There is no physical reason why she has that experience. Her body's still in bed, right? But this is what Bob says. He says that when my wife got back into her body, only then did her body begin to manifest skin conditions. Now, I've seen this before in my own work. I need to bring something to you guys' attention as well. In hauntology, we have cases, and I have them on my own cases. Also, Dr. Michael Lynch has a case just like those. In hauntology, we have cases where people are being scratched, but they're being scratched inside of their body. And so the scratches will manifest as subdermal images, and they will carve themselves and push themselves all the way up to the surface of the skin. You see where I'm going with this?
Yeah.
So I believe that what they're doing the same thing in hauntology as they're doing in these abductions. I don't believe for a second that they are only scratching the skin. I believe that what they're doing is they're attacking the soul, and it's manifesting through the soul into the skin itself. There's a lot of evidence for that too. But I want to slow down and make sure everybody understands that. Soul first, body second. And we got ufologists out there who are sitting there thinking, okay, it's all nuts and bolts. I'm afraid to say that it's far darker than that.
All right. Well, this would, I mean, you say that ufology is destined to fail. Don't you think that it would seem to suggest that there's a section of ufology, and we can talk about Luis Alexandro all day long as far as this goes, that's purposely out there trying to spread the misinformation. Like, they know what's really going on, but they have to, they get all engaged with these shows, and they popularize all of these shows that follow their narrative, right?
Right.
And that's what they're doing. They're just out there purposely spreading misinformation.
I don't know about Luis. I do know I've watched some of his work. But I would like to let everybody know, and you guys probably haven't heard this before because you probably haven't had a researcher that just leveled with you guys. But I can tell every one of you that are listening and that's going to listen to this show, we actually have a movement in the field that they're writing books, like compendiums of UFO abduction accounts. And there are people that have approached them with their accounts. And these individuals are being rejected. Why are they being rejected? Because their accounts were, quote unquote, too negative, right? So we have researchers out there that are literally building a narrative, doctoring the data, shielding us from the light of this experience. They don't want it to be, painful. They don't want people to be filled with trauma. And so they doctored the data. How do I know that? Because, I do a lot of shows and I've had people that reach out to me and they've told me straight up. I mean, I have pictures of people that have sent me with implants and stuff. What's happening is there are people that have experienced these entities, and they've been approaching these big name researchers, and these researchers have told them to get out, leave me alone. I'm not going to share your experience with the world. Now, see, if they're going to doctor the data, then as researchers, we're missing the whole picture. And so it's just like Geraldine Orozco. Of course, there's a negative aspect of this, right? I mean, it's not just love and light. If China or Russia or Mexico or anybody, Germany, had the capability and the evidential interest to peel your soul out of your body, what? Right? So we got to think bigger here. And until ufology starts to realize that these questions have to be answered, and that we have to acknowledge these negative experiences, until we do that, of course it's destined to fail. It's not going to stand up to scrutiny.
Yeah, well, let me run this by you because we've spoken to Geraldine, and she says that a lot of this, I guess a lot of the abductions that have happened to her, she's they take her on a craft and then they'll move her to an underground base location somewhere. And I was actually talking to Travis Walton. He called into our show once, and he said the same thing. They took him in the craft, and then he went to a base, another location where he was transferred. And we had on Thursday, we had Les Velez on from MUFON, and he says that out of the thousands and thousands and thousands of cases that he's researched, most of them they're transferred from the craft to a location, a base. I'm assuming it's we're assuming it's underground. I mean, obviously we don't know exactly where it is, but they're moved to another location. Now, have you run into any of that in your research, these underground locations or bases?
Yes. Yeah. So we do have cases, where people are abducted and are taken into like a basin, a base, or other, if it's not underwater, it's in some kind of cave. Yeah. And I believe that's true. I do believe that as well. There's also Anjali on Twitter. If you guys follow her, she's also coming out. She's an experiencer, and she's saying basically the same thing. So it's not out of the ordinary to hear a narrative like that. I believe that also plays into the role of demonology. Our ancestors believed these entities were hidden underneath water. And so they consider these entities, which we call aliens, whatever, they called them demons in history. They believe that they existed underwater. So that's a major role, and I believe that's the case. But again, I was reading the chat. Somebody had asked, how does the body survive without the soul? We don't know. Guys, they have the capability to keep the body alive while the soul is out of it. This is a transcendent species here. Whatever they are, or whoever they are, they're far more evolved than us, and they're unified. It's an amazing, amazing phenomenon. And I know I'm getting passionate, but I'm not going to apologize for that.
No, that's all right. You're allowed to, man. This is what you study.
Yeah.
So, do you think? I mean, you think it's all one species? Do you think it's demons? Do you think it's possible that it's both? Is it aliens and demons? Is it a
Well,
little bit of everything that's going on, or is it just one thing and they're trying to distract us? Like, oh well, that could be aliens, might be aliens. We don't know what it is. You know?
well, yeah, you're right. I will answer that by saying this. We don't know whose memories we are remembering. We don't know, even if we go through hypnosis and recession and all that stuff, we don't know if we're remembering what they want us to remember of the abduction or if we're remembering actually what occurred. I mean, these entities literally, they abduct people. Like I was reading some of Dr. Carl Turner's work. They'll abduct somebody. They'll do these experiments. They'll pull the soul out of the body. They'll remind the individual, hey, there's your body over there on the slab, like Dr. Carl Turner had, and if you don't cooperate with us, we'll kill you and we'll replace you with, that body. And it looks just like it. But my point here, guys.
So you think? Wait, hang on. I'm not gonna let you get away with that one. You're saying that they'll keep the soul out of the body and then replace. They'll put a different soul in that body and send that body back with a different soul?
Yes, sir. That's not Nathaniel Gillis speaking. That is an experiencer, more than one experiencer who has witnessed this occur, where they're literally, okay, like one individual, or this is Dr. Carl Turner's work, they literally asked this woman, they said, do you remember when you split into two? What? Like literally, she according to her account, she said, I walked into a room with him and I was in my body. But when I went into the room, I split in half and my soul is there looking at my body. Again, this is Betty. It's awful like the abduction experience that Betty and Bob Luca experienced, right? You're in two places at once. So, and back to your point, absolutely. It was, I think her name was Rachel or Jessica, but it was the experience that was working with Dr. Carla Turner. Yes, the entity looked at her straight in the eye and said, if you do not cooperate with us, do you see your body? And she said, yes, I do see my body. They said, well, if you don't obey what we want you to do, we can kill you. We can kill you. And then we'll send that body back to your family and no one will know the difference. No one will know you're dead. So this idea that Dr. David Jacobs, and I love Jacobs' work, this is completely other than. This is a lot more sinister than merely putting, DNA into bodies. They have the ability and evidently the interest to swap out consciousness into bodies. And so it's a crazy phenomenon, guys, but we've got to understand something here. We have people in the field of ufology that don't even believe the soul exists. We're beyond that now. We're way beyond that with this research.
Yeah. Vash says, can they have more than one soul in a body?
I don't know. Now, this gets back into the research of possession. According to ancient history, we would have people who were in their own body, but they would also be possessed with an entity. And so the entity would look like it's wild, but it would begin to speak through their throats. And what one rabbi said, that we were like wind-like instruments to them. So they would use their abilities and their breath to speak through us. But even in possession, there was always our consciousness in our own bodies. What it seems like they're doing, though, is that they're tapping into a measure of our potentiality that we are ignorant of right now. Like forget going to the hospital and getting treated physically. These entities have the ability and the desire not just to abduct consciousness, but to use our women to hatch consciousness through their bodies. This is what we call the missing fetus syndrome. So whatever they're doing, I do not believe it's limited to just, they're going to come here and look like us. No, they're playing by a lot of different rules here, guys. And I think that ufology needs to take a big, deep breath and realize that this is a lot more spiritual than we'd like to admit.
Yeah. All right. Well, Allegon says, has Nathaniel done research into the methods of hypnosis, regression therapy, or is he just speculating based on the written results of hypnotherapy sessions?
How would I be speculating on him? I mean, obviously I've studied hypnosis session and all that stuff. Yeah, I've obviously studied the UFO abduction phenomenon. So if we're going to ignore them because what they were too honest, right? Or is it what's that word that they always use? It's anecdotal evidence. No, it's not anecdotal. This is John Mack's work. For whoever asked that question, go read John Mack. John Mack already understood this, and that's what his entire work is about. So yes, I have studied the regression phenomenon and how to do that and all that. So we're beyond that now, guys. This is independently corroborated by people who are interreligious and cross-cultural. This phenomenon is worldwide. So it's crazy, but so it's present. It's here.
All right. So are you good if I open up the phone lines and let people call in? People have a ton of questions, man. Let me open up the phone lines for everybody.
I know this is new stuff, but I'm ready for the questions, man.
All right. I mean, I'm getting so many questions. Let me open up the line here and see. All right. So I got that there like that. So let me, I got to come over here. Boo, boo, boo. So let me ask you this. ML says, what if we live in a matrix and this is just normal doings of those who created us?
Well, there's no evidence of that. There's no evidence that they did create us. They could say that, I mean, but then again, they also tell people they're angels. And, there's children being abducted by Mickey Mouse. So these are liars. They manipulate. They have conformed. At least in my research, they have hacked our belief systems. So what I've learned to do in my research is forget what they've just told us, because there's a lot of BS in the field, and there's a lot of BS that they use against us. But what are their behavioral patterns, right? Like what do they do? Like it's because they can hide themselves behind the mask of religion. They can call themselves Jesus, Muhammad, or Satan. But the truth is, once you get down to the brass tacks of it, their behavioral patterns are the same throughout all of history. But they will hide behind religious figures. Like I have people that I work with all across the world. One lady was in India. She was being groomed, literally. I don't mean that like to be perverse or anything, but she was being conditioned by one of these entities. And it was appearing to her, it was the same entity, but it was appearing to her in the image of every one of her lovers, constantly looking and appearing to her in an attempt to impregnate her. So we used to call them incubi. But again, that's just researchers limiting themselves to the language we used to describe them. I hope that made sense, guys. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry about that. I had my thing muted because I was coughing. I forgot to turn it back on.
Dude, I thought I lost the call.
No, I'm still here. I gotta turn that up, I guess, when I'm done talking. All right, guys. Good. So if anybody wants to call in, the phone line is now open. The number is 256-850-4513. You can also find me on Skype. If you have Skype, just search for Conflict Radio, and you can call me that way as well. So give that a try, guys. Feel free to go ahead and call in. I see everybody here has questions, so let's just get it on. Wendy says, I absolutely agree that they are deceptive. They are disguised and tell so many different stories. You can't trust anything that they say.
Correct. This is now, if anybody see, I first got into this field as a demonologist, and I wasn't a self-proclaimed demonologist. No, I had poured myself into the literature of demonology to the point that in order for people to identify what my expertise is, or if you call that expertise, they call me a demonologist. But you're exactly right. These entities have lied. Like, they're liars. And so what angers me the most is how these entities are grooming people, specific experiencers, that they are manipulating the field to promote these individuals. Now, if you want to know who they are, look for where they are and what they're saying, because it's as if these entities are creating profits out of people. Like one individual, he was he was abducted and everything. I'm not going to mention his name. It's not about him personally, but now he's being visited by a lady in white. And now the abduction experience has mutated into this entity appearing as an apparition. Now, hello, demonology, we've experienced that in hauntings. But not only is the abduction going on, but the apparition is now teaching doctrine to him, guys. Doctrine. Now, I need everybody to put your seatbelt on, and this is going to be a very rude awakening. But there's only one God in biblical antiquity that prophesied the existence of these entities coming to earth and interacting with humanity and trying to teach them doctrine. His name's Yahweh. He told us this was going to happen. And this is not doctrine, this is not like salvific. But guys,
is there anything in the Bible that suggests that the soul can be removed from the body?
Yes, absolutely. Number one, you have Yeshua in the New Testament. He talks about when an unclean spirit leaveth a man, he goes out and wanders in dry places. Yeshua, Jesus, was referring to the apocalypse of Ezra and the 7 stages of grief that a person goes through when they die. If they died a bad death, or it basically deals with the afterlife and burial rituals. But absolutely, it does. It deals with necromancy too. The witch of Endor, she pulled the consciousness, the soul of Samuel out of the earth. And for those people out there that say, I grew up in theology, and people are like, you know what, that wasn't really Samuel. It was Samuel. In the Hebrew, the witch called him Elohim, a god. So it was Samuel. But we need to realize, guys, that we're smack dab in the middle of biblical antiquity when we're dealing with these entities. Matter of fact, and I'm not, I'll be honest with you guys, I'm not even a big proponent of that theory, right? There's a lot of researchers out there that hold conferences. They go to Egypt, they go to Israel. They're trying to propagate this. It's really lazy literature about the Nephilim. So what I'm saying is this, guys, it took me a lot to get where I am. Because it's right there in front of us. He called them soul hunters. We had no understanding of what a soul hunter was.
Yeah, or soul collectors. Yeah.
Correct. Until we started having experiencers. And modernity said, hey, listen, guys, something occurred to me last night and it wasn't cool. I watched me being pulled out of my own body. And so that's where we are. It's a very troubling time.
All right. So ML wants to know, what are the reasons of, I guess, cattle mutilations? Now, why would they be doing that?
We don't know. I will suggest this. This gets back to, again, we're dealing with gods. We're dealing with what I call the currency of consciousness. We have evidence that these cattle mutilations have been going on throughout history. One thing I would like to point out to everybody is that if you saw someone who had done an animal sacrifice and they left the corpse of that animal, we would probably stumble over it and say that's a cattle mutilation, right? We would think, okay, they cut certain parts of the body out, they shed blood. So these entities, again, if we're going to be dealing with necromancers and rituals, with this is Geraldine's work here, we would be dealing with consciousness. We would be dealing with entities who will kill something to conjure someone. And I do believe that does play a role in this. Also, Epstein, guys, Epstein was also playing a role in this entire phenomenon. And I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I just know my stuff.
Yeah, we got to be careful when we start going there, right?
Yeah, I got you.
Yeah.
We wouldn't even go there, but maybe later. Somebody email me.
God help us. We talk about that. No. That's one of those things that we aren't allowed to talk about. Not Quite Human wants to know, what are the point of crop circles then?
I don't know. We don't know.
Do you think it could be the good coming through, trying to give us a message?
What's the good?
I mean, I get it. There's evil. There's a lot of evil out there, but there's just as much good out there. There has to be. It has to be universally balanced, doesn't it?
We don't know that. That's a worldview. Like my dad's a pastor, and he and I go over and over. Like we talk about this all the time. Because this entity, this presence in the world is pushing everybody, including Sam Harris. It's pushing atheism and Christianity into the same corner, because these entities are operating with impunity. They transcend a microcosm of world beliefs. They're abducting Muslims, Jews, atheists, pagans. They're abducting children. And what's amazing too is that they can abduct you And then 25 years later, you remember what actually happened to you as a kid. So whatever we're seeing right now in the phenomenon, it's possible that they're wanting us to see this. It's possible that they're allowing, okay, let me back up and say this. Why in the heck would they abduct people and then look at them and show them all kinds of stuff and be like, you know what? You're not going to remember this. But then a year, 10, 20 years later, they do remember it, right? So whatever's going on here, I do believe they're controlling the narrative. And I do believe they're behind this new movement in the field that's trying to doctor the data. And I hate it.
All right. So I'm trying to go through, man, you've got everybody on fire in here.
Hey guys, I love y'all, man. And I love conflict. If you guys don't, like my research, it's fine. I respect all of you guys, but at least we're having a dialogue here. This stuff is transcendent, and we've got to talk about it. Even if my theory's wrong, I don't care. At least somebody's talking about it in the field.
Yeah, all right. All right, guys, the number is open, 256-850-4513. If anybody wants to call in and talk to Nathaniel, he is here ready to talk to you. But we might have some shy people in here, I suppose.
That's fine.
Normally the case, but boy, they're asking their questions in chat. Say I do beach wedding says love your research. It's real and eye-opening.
Thank you. That means more than you know.
I mean,
thank you so much.
Once you get on something and you feel like you do feel like that you figured it out, right? Is that your gut feeling in this?
Yeah, it is. And you guys got to realize, man, like I have ADHD, and I was undiagnosed as a kid, but it makes more sense now the older I get. But guys, when I get a thought, I actually I research until I can't get it out of my head. I call people
All right, hang on, we got a call here.
Uh-oh. Okay, I didn't know what that was. Okay.
All right, how you doing, caller? Welcome to Conflict Radio. You're on the air. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
My name is Johnny. I'm from Oregon.
How you doing, Johnny?
What's up, Johnny? How you doing, bub?
Okay.
So you got a question?
Yeah, I had a since you seem to be talking about the Bible, who were the Anakim giants descended from? They keep talking. It just says they're descended from somebody named Anak. Like, who was Anak? Was he a human, or was he a Nephilim,
yes.
or was he something else, or what was
he? Yeah. So when you're getting into the, especially Genesis 6 and that narrative, it's helpful to realize that the Hebrews did not author that legend. They inherited it. How do I know that? Well, we know that because of comparative linguistics. You go into their linguistics and how they employ what's called the Rephaim. We have ritual bowls that mention the Repiumai. And these are your Anakim or Anaki, right? Hello, Sitchins. Anunnaki. All of these entities existed in that period of history. But again, if we're going to be dealing with the Anaki, the Nephilim, the Rephaim, we need to realize that this is literally the impregnating of the dead in the bodies of the living. They did that. They did that in Genesis 6. They created a species of giants. Now, their language that they used, I have heard it in my own shows. Matter of fact, I did a show with Dark Horse Paranormal, where these entities actually manifested through the headphones to where the host threw the headphones out. She ran out of her house freaking out. These entities were in Genesis 6, and they were the dead that had possessed the bodies of the living. And I hope that answers the question.
Johnny?
Kind of. So, does this include, when they went into the Holy Land, for the first time, and there were giants there, after they came out of Egypt?
Yes, absolutely. So that land is called Canaan. And it wasn't just Israel or Joshua that went in there. One important aspect of that is that the Ammonites, a people, went in there as well. And this is a huge clue because the Ammonites give us a kind of a reference point when they mention these entities. The Ammonites called these creatures the Zam Zu Mim. Now, your Hebrew linguistics, anything with an IM is plural. It's a plurality. But the Zamzu was the only thing in the Ammonite language. It was like that was their word. Because this is very interesting, guys. You got to pay attention to this very quickly. The reason they called them Zamzu is because the language that these creatures used to converse with each other sounded like a z, a buzzing sound. It was almost insect-like. Now, the reason I bring that up is because if you go into Isaiah, the book of Isaiah talks about the necromancers. In Yahweh, the God of Israel mentions, he's talking about people that go and counsel and converse with these necromancers. And he says that these necromancers have a language of buzzing, a chirping, and a muttering. So that's who we're dealing with. It's quite literally a dead person looking through the eyes of a living person, impregnating us. It's a horrifying revelation.
Johnny, you got anything else?
Yeah, you know what that kind of reminds me of is I think ancient Sumerian, the word for soul is Z, which kind of sounds like a buzzing sound. It's like Z or something.
Correct. Yeah, so this entire concept of the soul, guys, these entities, this species, they understand it. They understand it in and out. Not only that, but it's almost as if it's not just, okay, they understand it, but they're conjuring it in a sense. So I do believe that these abductions have a role in it. Like I do believe that there are rituals occurring during these abductions. I would also, if you guys are listening, I would also point every one of you back to the ancient burial rituals of antiquity. Why? Because we have abductees who are being abducted and watching these entities self-mummify. I'm getting passionate. All right, I gotta slow down. They self-mummified as they crawled into their sarcophaguses, their sarcophagi in ships. It's almost like a vampire who sleeps in a coffin. That's what we're hearing from a lot of these abductees. So of course, they're present, and I do believe that for the researchers listening, we want to understand the future. We got to go read the past.
All right, Johnny. Thanks for calling in, man.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, man. Have a good day. All right, guys. The line is open. Let's see here. ML has a question. He says, or she, does the guest see alien and Rh negative bloodline issues here? Because we have gone into this, and a lot of abductions are from that Rh negative bloodline. Have you noticed that? What does that have to do with if they're demonic beings? Why are they going after this blood type?
I don't know. We don't know. Getting back into the research of the DNA and the blood type, one thing that is it's troubling as well is that we have evidence that they are impregnating women and then killing the hybrid in their body, or even if it's just a child and it's not a hybrid. We have evidence, like this is Dr. Cola Turner's work, where a lady, first of all, we got to say this, she was not being intimate with her husband. Just got to put that out there. But she was abducted. In the abduction, Jesus shows up. This is important, guys. Come on. They've hacked our belief system. Jesus shows up, holds his hand out, and says, all seed belongs to me. So 2 months after that original initial abduction, she's pregnant. She looks at her husband and says, quote, this is not a viable fetus. It will not survive. Next thing you know, now this is going to be very important, guys. I'm not talking about a normally born child. I'm not talking about, a husband and a wife, they get together and they have a kid. No, this was something that they implanted in her. The baby dies in her womb. Okay? It's very important, guys. She's abducted again. And she's sitting there in the abduction when they bring her a hybrid child. And by this time, you know, this is Dr. Clark Turner's work. She's crying to Dr. Turner, and she says, Dr. Turner, this is going to sound like I'm crazy. She's like, but I promise you, this is exactly what happened. She said, they gave me a child and told me to look at it and hold it. She said, but what I don't understand is that the consciousness of the child that died in my womb was placed in the body of that hybrid baby. So we have something completely alien to us right now. It's possible, and I'm not even possible. I'm pretty, it appears that the hybridization program is far darker than Dr. Jacobs' work. It appears that they're using us to hatch consciousness, to take out and to place it in. So this is not just a physical body that they're dealing with. We're also dealing with them creating ghosts out of us.
Do you think it's possible that they're like they're moving the souls of the elite into newer, younger bodies?
I do believe that. I do believe that people that have lived and died, you know, that these entities were first, like if we're talking about Nephilim, these entities were first your first exorcists, your first midwives. But I do believe that, and that's the role that possession plays. This gets into James Frazier's work with the Golden Bow. He talks about how these entities would be on the battlefield, and when they were mortally wounded, they would dispossess their own body, guys, and they would place their soul in someone or something else. Now, here's another reference for the researchers. You guys need to look up the Katamua inscription. In 2008, on the Zincurli expedition, the University of Chicago sent out a group of archaeologists to Turkey, and they found the very first reference to the neshama, the soul, ever found. They found it in a sarcophagus of Katamua. He says, quite literally, my soul is in the stele, it's in my sarcophagus. So it's almost as if these entities are operating on an ancient belief system of the soul. And guys, if ufology is going to hold to the nuts and bolts materialistic aspect of the work, we've already failed.
So if people are studying ufology and they don't believe in life after death, and they don't believe in I guess souls and God and that sort of thing, then they're never going to get it, are they?
Well, they're going to be forced into a corner here, guys. I mean, my God, I was working with an abductee, right? Okay, I did a show. It's been about 2 years ago now. I did a show, and I was, talking to this abductee. This abductee said that he was in bed one night with his wife. They're sleeping. It's like 3 a.m, and he feels something underneath the covers. And I'm not trying to freak anybody out, but I'm trying to prove a point here. He says he pulls the covers off of his body. He says there's a child in his bed that looked to have been 5 or 6 years old. It was a girl. She was pale in complexion, and she looked at him right in the face and said, "Hi, I'm dead."
Wow.
He said, and then he said, "I'm freaking out." He said, "My wife is there." He said, "We're both abductees. We've both been experiencing this phenomenon." He said, but it was very, very troubling. He said, because as his eyes are adjusting to the darkness, he sees another apparition in the corner of the room. It's a little boy. The little girl in the bed, who was physical, she was there. She looked at him and said, "That's my brother. He's dead too. Our daddy killed us. He just doesn't know he's dead yet."
Oh, wow.
So even moving further, Whitley Strieber was abducted. And during his abduction, he said he witnesses a friend of his with him who's been dead for 12 years. So whatever we're dealing with here, guys, it's almost like they're killing people and harvesting them, like a recruitment program of some sort.
All right. Don M wants to know, do you believe that all aliens are... I'm sorry, I lost the question. Do you believe that all aliens are malevolent?
I'm leaning towards that. And I know there are researchers out there that would disagree with me, and they have their reasons, and I understand that. But it's not like they're here trying to change our lives, you know. They're not here trying to educate us and try to raise our vibrations of consciousness and all that. They don't care. They don't care. You know, and what they will do though, what they will do is they will manipulate, they'll lie, they'll look at you right in the face and say, I'm going to do A, B, and C to you, and you'll never remember it. And then 25 years later, somebody has sexual trauma in their life, and you know, they have to go see a therapist because memories of something that occurred to them start manifesting in their life. So whatever we're dealing with here, guys, they're not trying. What was that? Yeah,
all right.
They're not trying to heal our species. They're not giving us technology. You know, they don't care. Like one day, he actually told a guy that was dying. He literally, he looked at him and said, "You're going to die. Your species, they don't have the technology to heal you." Well, they sure as heck do, but they don't. So this is a strange thing.
All right, caller, you're on the air. Welcome to Conflict Radio. How you doing today?
Hi, Mike. It's David from the UK.
How you
Can
doing?
you hear me?
Yeah, man, I can hear you pretty good. How you doing today?
Cool. I've never used this before, so I had to sign into Skype just to talk to you.
It sounds pretty good, man. I think you might have to turn your mic down just a little bit. It might be coming in a little loud.
I've turned it off. Maybe I'm shouting too loud.
Oh, okay. All right. You got a question for Nathaniel?
First of all, I wanted to say hello to Arlene in the chat, who obviously we all know from Arlene.
Yeah.
Nathan, Nathaniel, he doesn't really have any personal experience himself, does he? I'd like to know if he actually had any experience himself, or from my point of view, there's no empathy towards the experiences that he's got knowledge of. Does that make sense to you?
Empathy, absolutely have empathy. I've worked with experiencers.
But do you without experience yourself, do you actually? I don't know if you actually realize what you're dealing with.
I don't know. You know, I don't have to experience something to research it. I think that destroyed half of our researchers. Forget Bud Hopkins. You know, forget anybody who researches this without being an experiencer. Also, the flip side, I don't think that just because you experienced it, you can define it for everybody else. So, of course, you know, I have my own experiences. You know, but I don't feel obligated to want an experience just so it'll help me understand the phenomenon. You know, because if that's the litmus test for researchers, cancel every program. Don't have any researchers. Forget John Mack, right? John Mack was never abducted.
Yeah, but it's like asking a chef if he can tell the difference between salt and sugar.
Yeah, but we're not eating at Waffle House here, guys. This isn't culinary arts.
Yeah, I'm not a chef, and I can tell the difference between salt and sugar.
Yeah. So we're talking about consciousness. You know, I'm not here at Frank's Kitchen in the corner. This is something wholly different. I'm not trying to be I just don't like the implication that in order for me and my research to make sense, I have to experience it. That is
I don't know.
I don't like that.
I love Mike's channel, and everything resonate. Most of the stuff resonates with me. So because I've experienced a lot of the things that come up in the conversation, so I can understand.
Are you an experiencer, David?
On many different things.
It's good.
ETs. You like to talk about demons, ghosts. I'm a healer. I'm a psychic. I can do all that kind of stuff. So I can.
So what do you? I mean, if you're a psychic, what do you think about the idea that they can pull souls out of bodies?
No, I don't believe that.
No?
I don't. I believe from personal experience that we're a dual located, at least dual located person in a spiritual level. So I'd agree that we're in at least two places simultaneously. So that's true. But to pull the soul out of the body. You can pull the consciousness out of the body, but that's a different level to the soul.
Right. And I've heard that before. Like, what kind of dimensions are there of the soul? You know what I mean? Like, are there like 7 stages, 7 levels? I mean, all of this is very interesting, but let's get back on the subject that I had. In order for me to have a good point, I have to be an experiencer. That's fallible. You know, feelings are fallible. I don't think that, you know, just because, I mean, come on. Do oncologists have to have cancer to research cancer? Do they have to experience it to prescribe medication for cancer? No, absolutely.
No, yeah, you don't have to have had cancer to realize the stress that someone's in. That's being an empathic, being empathy, you know, with someone, you know, just having a connection with someone's pain, and you don't have to actually have had experienced it.
Right. I don't believe it either. You know, I think that I do have a heart. Obviously, I do have an empathic heart for experiences. I don't think that I even implied that I didn't. And if I did, guys, forgive me. I'm not suggesting that people are forbidden because of their experiences. No, quite the opposite, right? I'm looking at the data sample. I'm working with these people. I'm encountering them and interviewing them and talking to them. But again, we got to look at something else that's very profound here, guys. We have people in the field, and I think that what you were referencing is, at least, was the individual that thinks that because he experienced it, his experience or his interpretation of his experience gets to define the phenomenon. We can't do that. We can't. What we have to do as researchers is be intellectually honest enough to look at the data sample, look at them all, right? And we can't just, say, you know what, I didn't experience it, therefore I'm not qualified to research it. Then oncologists better get cancer before they start treating it, right? And I don't like that.
Yeah, I get that, but then there's different levels of pain, and you can't. You have to separate the different levels of experience, and
I don't know how.
Yeah,
these aren't floors to a building, right? They're not floors, And I obviously I love experiences. I mean, that's why I'm in this field. I have a heart for them. My only point, guys, is that if we're going to base someone's research on what they've experienced, that's you're going to wipe out academia. You got extras. You got physicians out there that are treating people for halitosis. Doesn't mean that their breath stinks or that it should stink. It just means that they're researching the field.
Yeah, but when you get into this kind of level of stuff, it's beyond. It's beyond. Some guy reading a book can't tell you how you felt. They can't tell you how you felt or what you experienced when somebody died that was close to you, or if you saw a ghost, or you woke up in the middle of the night and you were floating 12 inches above the bed, and all of a sudden you just dropped when you woke up, and somebody else can't tell you that.
No. But I'm not relying on what I'm saying, guys, is this. I'm relying on literature. So someone else is telling me their story, just like you are. Now, if I'm not supposed to rely on them, then why should I rely on you, right? Why would it matter if we're going to have this conversation? Does that make sense? I hope you understand what I'm saying here. What I'm suggesting here, guys, is that there are people out there who are experiencing this. It's documented. It's all over the world. If you don't believe me, look up Dr. Carly Turner, Betty and Bob Luca, Ray Fowler, Bud Hopkins, John Mack, all of them.
Yeah.
And so I guess what I'm saying is if I'm not supposed to be taking their word for it, why should I take yours, right? So I have to consider both your experiences and theirs as well as a conglomerate and as an appreciation. I love experiences. I don't think that I even alluded to the fact that I don't.
All right, David, thanks so much for calling in, man.
Okay, cheers, Mike. Thanks.
All right.
Thanks, Bob.
Bye.
All right. All right, man. Well, I mean, you're going to get hit by all kinds of different questions, right? It's what you're facing.
Yeah, that's fine.
And that's not a bad question to ask, right? I suppose.
No, not at all. Not at all. I liked it, man. That's a good question. Yeah. I just, it's fascinating to me that there are people out there that think that I have to be abducted for me to have an opinion on abduction. I think that's a little bit, unfortunate.
I have an opinion on it. I don't know if I've been abducted or not, but I have opinions on it. You don't have to have
right.
I don't have to play football to have an experience on football, right?
Right.
Or an idea about it.
Just don't have to have cancer to treat it like this. Again, this is, it's a great question. And, I love that question. It's good stuff.
Yeah. Bash Wolfward says, caller makes a good point, but so does the guest, because caller's experience doesn't define the entire subject.
It doesn't. And I want everybody to understand my heartbeat in this, guys. That is a very good point. It was a very good question. But what I'm afraid of are people, individuals that these entities are promoting. It's not just the field that's promoting them. These entities are doctoring the data. They're guiding these researchers to promote specific experiencers and experiences. Now, if that's happening, we have to ask ourselves why. And it's just, but it's a very big problem. And I hope I made sense, guys.
Yeah. All right, guys, the phone line's open. Give a call in if you want. 256-850-4513. I guess we've got about 20 minutes or so left. Let's see here. Bash says he's going to call in. So Bash is going to call in a minute.
Okay.
Are there, I guess, countries out there that aren't having any abduction problems, or do you think this is a worldwide issue?
I think it is worldwide, and we have cases of that happening. Uh-oh.
Go ahead, continue. Hang on, Bash.
Yeah, if you go into Bud Hopkins' work, it's fascinating. John Mack's work too. It's interreligious and cross-cultural, guys. It's not just Americans. it's everywhere. They're abducting people from all over the world.
Yeah, I think so too. Bash, welcome to Conflict Radio. How you doing today? You're calling from Australia, correct?
Indeed, I am. I'm very well. Thank you very much.
Man, it's so awesome to have you on the show. I'm glad you guys are still able to get on the internet over there.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, eventually we'll be using pigeons and rocks on strings.
Yeah, make sure you get your pigeons now, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
All right. So you got a question?
Yeah. Look, I'm actually curious to know how the guest's data correlates specifically in different cultures. So, and also I'd like to know how they're able to distinguish difference when you're reading older text between the text then and how language was interpreted to now. Because, when you read older based text, the way people talk and what they meant, and you try and read it today, is going to be two different things potentially. So, yeah, I'm just curious how this research has gone with regards to those two questions.
That's a good question. Okay, so when we're dealing with texts, we got to go to the material cultures. It's literally archaeology and linguistics. Like for instance, when we're talking about the Rephaim in biblical antiquity, we know what the Rephaim were and what the material culture believed they were in antiquity. How do we know that? Because we have ritual bowls that describe who they were in detail. So in antiquity, they were called repiumai, or dead people, ghosts. And so we have ritual bowls, we have material culture. We also have what's called comparative etymology. This gets really academic and deep. But comparative etymology basically says this. We know we have like a papyri, we have ritual bowls, we have accounts, we have writings where people actually detail the name, where they got it from, and what they are. And so as a researcher, what I do is I take that word like repiumai, and I follow the linguistics to modernity. And I say, okay, when was this first mentioned? Okay, the earliest mention was, what was it, 2nd century BCE, all that stuff. And, what did they believe these entities were? And I hope that makes sense. But the material culture, your ritual bowls, your archaeology, all of that plays a major role in what our ancestors believed these entities were. Now, put that all aside. I hope it makes sense. But put that aside, we also need to realize that they were using descriptions as definitions. So like Lamishtu was supposed to be a child snatcher. It's the missing fetus syndrome, right? In the UFO abduction phenomenon. but they called her a demon. And so what happens is, like, especially my research, and I can't speak for all the other researchers, but what I do is I look for behavioral patterns. I don't care about the names, because, our ancestors have called these entities different names throughout millennia. But what are they doing? And if you look at the bloody footprints, you'll see that their behavioral patterns are really what they look like and who they are. I hope that made sense.
You got that, Vash?
I mean, I'm going to say I got most of it.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, I think it's, for me, because it's not something that I've looked into and all that sort of thing. So it's hard for me to sort of understand the complexities. So, but I think you've tried to explain it well. And again, more of a lack of knowledge on my end. I would say, how did you go about the cultural differences though between, say, I don't know how abduction and the whole entire phenomenon occurs in the Asian culture?
Well, if you're talking about the Asian and the Middle East, the Middle Eastern culture, all of that, what we have to realize, guys, is that they used to demonize these entities. And that's why, there are people out there who say, okay, they're demons. And I don't really believe they're demons in the sense of the Catholic Church believes they're demons. But what our ancestors did, especially in the Asian culture, they would demonize consciousness. So I was talking to a lady earlier today about this. So one of these entities, her name was Lilith or Lilith. Lil, if you go into the Phoenician text, which we're talking about culture here, Lil was a kind of ghost. Literally, they believed that the Lil spirit was the ghost, the apparition that leaves the body at the moment of death. And so our ancestors had categorized the Lil kind of spirits. Matter of fact, this is very interesting too. They believe that there are some Lil spirits that have the same substance. Like their apparition is made from the same substance, but they had a different status. And so as the world evolved and culture emerged, we have Lil spirit becoming Lilith in Jewish folklore. Does it make sense? So what they did is they incorporated the Lil into their demonology. So that's why I don't like to limit myself to linguistics. But I also, we have to understand what they meant, and then that's why my research is where it's at.
So, out of interest, though, if you believe in said entities, does that necessarily make the experience more viable or more likely to occur?
It doesn't, honestly. And I get this question asked by my dad. My dad's a pastor, and I've gotten, run through the ringer by him and a lot of people because they don't want me researching this. Okay, so really the question that you're asking is, are these entities independent of our belief system? And that's accurate. Yes, they are. Matter of fact, it's not just that they're independent of our belief systems, they've hacked our belief systems. So if you're an atheist, they're not going to show up as God. They're going to hack the belief system. Even if you're a Christian, like again, they would hack your belief system and manifest as Jesus.
Well, that would suggest that they're reading our thoughts and our minds to an extent.
Correct. But you don't have to believe in them for them to exist, right? And this gets into the study of apparitions. If you guys want to research that aspect of it, go to the American Institute of Psychical Research and read what they have to say about the apparition phenomenon. These entities are independent of us, but they will play into our belief systems. So the question is asked, if I don't believe they exist, will I still be abducted? Absolutely, 100%. Now, their victimology, again, they don't discriminate. I was talking to an experiencer late last month, who was talking to me about how when she was a little girl, she thought she had like a hot air balloon descend down into her room during an abduction. They're far darker and a lot more intelligent.
Interesting.
Troubling.
Yeah, because
I know, right?
I was curious because when people have said experience that we have heard from previous guests that naming say, for example, God or Jesus, can potentially make the experience go away or stop. So if you don't believe in it, then that's why I was like trying to correlate the two.
Correct. It's a very good question, and I'm glad you asked that. But, like I said, they don't discriminate. I mean, they're going to abduct a pagan. They're going to abduct an atheist. They're going to abduct a rabbi. I mean, they don't care. So more importantly, their victimology here is different. We don't know why they're picking people the way they do, and what's even more troubling is there are many people, this is what Dr. Carla Turner suggested. It's quite possible, guys, that we're all experiencing this, and the only reason we know about it is because there are a few handful of people throughout millennia who actually remember, right? So this is it's a heck of a lot bigger than nuts and bolts ufology.
All right, Vash. Thanks so much for calling in, man.
Hey, anytime. Thanks very much for answering my questions and having me on.
No.
Oh man, always a pleasure to have you on, man.
Cheers. Bye bye.
Stay safe over there, buddy.
Will do.
All right, guys.
They're coming in, bud.
Conflict Radio, you're on the air. How you doing today? What's your name? Where are you calling from? Hello? All right. Well, hello. I guess hello. Oh, I guess they hung up there. Let's see. Not Quite Human had a question here. He said, "What are the cultural differences between the Greys and the reptilians?" Now, if the Greys are biological, or I guess synthetic beings, couldn't they be manufactured by the reptilians themselves?
Correct, absolutely. And we still don't know if the reptilians are actual physical beings. Now, this gets back into the phenomenon and how they can project certain situations into our mind that are not actually occurring. This gets back to the what's it called? The witch era literature. For all you researchers, I would actually recommend a book by R.E.L. Masters. It's called Eros and Evil. And he mentions how in the medieval period that there were witches, quote unquote witches, that were being abducted by these demons. Of course, that's what they call them, demons. They were being abducted and they were being taken to sabbats or sabbats, whatever you want to call it, however you want to pronounce it. And these witches were experiencing what they thought was copulating with corpses. This is PG, so it's copulating, guys. Read between the lines here. But they believed that they were copulating with corpses, but that interface that these entities were using to do what they were doing with these witches, it began to fuzz in and out like a frequency. And what these witches witnessed, say that 5 times, what they witnessed in that fleeting moment was that they were not being accosted by corpses. They were being probed by metallic things, like metallic objects. And so they were being abducted. They were experiencing the modern UFO abduction phenomenon, but the interface these entities were using on them was corpses, right? So they would appear to these individuals as dead people. So when we're dealing with the phenomenon in terms of the reptilians, the Greys, all of this stuff, I would suggest that we have to quit looking at what they look like and start asking ourselves what they're doing, because I believe that's really where the information exists. They can appear as whatever they want to, but the bloody footprints that lead into the murder, you'll start to count them and see where they lead.
Well, let me ask you this: a lot of people suggest that the reptilians aren't really reptilians at all. That they're the sons of Cain. They're a group. Yeah. They're a group here on Earth that believe that they're the sons of Cain. Now you know who they are, right?
Yes, I do. And that's another theory that there's some evangelical researchers that believe that. But even if we're going to look at the apparitions and what they appear as, we've got people like Dr. Carla Turner had a man, Ted Rice. He was abducted with his grandmother, and they're on this ship, and one of the entities starts trying to copulate with Ted's grandmother. And now this is incredible. She says, I've only known one man in my life, and he's been dead for like 11 or 12 years, something like that. Okay. Out of the shadows emerges an image of her husband. That's how they conformed to her memory of him. This is very important, guys. That's why when you have evangelicals who are abducted, a lot of them will experience a Swedish Presbyterian version of Jesus. He's not that Jewish rabbi from Galilee or anything. No, it's the white Jesus, right? What are we experiencing here? What they're doing is they're conforming their image to our beliefs. And I think that plays a big role in to what, how they're manifesting as, like your grays and all that.
All right, let me ask you this.
Yep.
What about soul protectors? Doesn't the Bible mention that there are soul protectors out there as well?
The only thing that I have found in the Bible that makes a reference to the soul hunter is in Ezekiel 13. As far as I can tell, we do have evidence that they experience these entities. We do not have evidence that they conquered these entities. We do not have evidence that their amulets and their rituals worked against these creatures. We don't. And I hate to say that, but there are people out there that say, I called on Jesus and it worked. They left as soon as I called on him. And I love that. I'm happy that worked, but that one experience doesn't define the phenomenon, because it's largely inconclusive, because just like we have 5 people where they called on Jesus and they left, we have 15, 20 other people who did the same thing. And they just kept doing what they're doing. Like a couple months ago, I went to Rhode Island for a week because I had to unplug from this work. And, I was, what led me to get out of it and just leave my house and leave Ohio is I was reading an abduction account where a lady was praying. She was saying the Lord's Prayer, "Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name." In mid-prayer, her eyes rolled back in her head and she's pulled out of her body. So
wow.
This is some scary stuff. And I'm not an alarmist. I know people probably think I am, but I'm just trying to interpret the data as best as I can. But guys, we have a serious problem here, because they're not just abducting the bodies; they're far darker than that.
All right, so I guess we are running out of time. But
yeah,
what can we do to protect ourselves? What can we do to keep this from happening to us? That's what we need to get out there, right?
Right.
Do we have an answer to that?
Well, again, I think that it's largely inconclusive. I will say that according to Steve Mera's work, he's a parapsychologist. According to some of the ancient texts, these entities have an abhorrent taste for iron. They hate iron. They feel like it. I don't know if it messes with their frequency or what, but we have texts like the Namishtu text where they would actually wear iron amulets around their neck to battle with these entities in hopes that they wouldn't abduct them. But right now, guys, they're pushing religion and atheism into the same corner. Here's why: because atheism says there's no life after death, and then religion says there is, but not like we're experiencing in this phenomenon. So it's kind of it's funny to me, and I'm not making it trivial or anything, but it's interesting how both of those fields are going to sit there and experience this. Because, it's bigger than both of them. It's bigger than religion, and it's bigger than atheism. So we're in it for the long haul.
Yeah, it seems like we are, aren't we?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a feeling like, I don't know, like I kind of have I'm having a feeling, I think a lot of the world's having a feeling that it's not going to be long before we all kind of figure this out, right? Like, do you think that there's like an awakening going on, that this is happening?
I think that there are people that are, I think so in a sense. I do believe that there are people that are starting to shake themselves out of the illiterate slumber of dogma. Absolutely. But these entities, again, it's like we're being invaded by the impossible here, guys. These entities are almost pulling us into their own dimension. and then returning us into ours. So whatever is happening in this phenomenon, it's transcendent. Whoever they are, they manipulate, they lie, they harvest consciousness. And it's just, you know, I don't know, as a species, as a human, I don't know what we're going to do about it.
Yeah. All right. Well, I mean, I guess, man, I mean, hopefully
it's a lot, ain't it, Bob? It's a lot.
Hopefully,
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
It's all right, man. Hopefully that, you know, to be honest with you, hopefully you're wrong.
Yeah.
You know, honestly.
I do. I want to be wrong. You know, I don't want this stuff to be real. Yeah. You know, I mean, God, you should have seen my face when that gentleman told me about how when his wife woke up in the middle of the night to a dead toddler in his bed. You know, like she literally looked at him and said, "I'm dead." That's my so. You know, there's a role that death is playing in this phenomenon. I don't know if they're killing people or, you know, during these abductions. I can tell you this, that Ray Fowler's work is transcendent. You guys got to look him up. Ray Fowler had a theory that I agree with here. He believed that we're dealing with some form of evolution of consciousness. Like these entities first started out as ghosts and they evolved into these apparitional beings. Now, I'm not the only one that believes that. Chris Bledsoe makes references to the fact that these entities that have been teaching him doctrine, they're apparitions. So we're experiencing the same phenomenon both in hauntology and in the abduction experience. They're the same entities. Now, here's the question. Is abduction of the soul a form of death? Yeah, have we confused death with growing into a new version of our existence? Are we encountering these entities? Are they dead people that have molted? Like I call them molters, right? These are the biggest questions that ufology should be thinking about. But whatever they're doing, these ships are alive, they're conscious, and these entities are almost, and I say it again, pulling us into that dimension of death where our soul leaves our body. And that's the couch of the argument right there.
Yeah, Wendy Williams says, keep speaking out, Nathaniel. Maybe knowledge will be power in this situation.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. I hope everybody understands my heart, guys. You know, this is not a curiosity to me. This takes a lot out of me spiritually. A lot of this research is dark. I mean, you know, you pour over ancient texts, and that's really interesting and fun, you know, but when you get into the depths of this darkness and, you know, it starts to eat at you, and it costs a lot. And I would suggest as well, guys, that you start listening to my other interviews, especially the last interview I did on conflict. You know, we got really deep in that one as well.
Yeah, that was a great interview, man. I that was one of those shows where I'm like up for a while thinking about it afterwards that night, right? Yeah,
we went deep. Yeah, so whatever we're dealing with, it is a form of necromancy. Now here's a question. Let's get back into Geraldine's work.
She's freaking phenomenal.
Dude, she's amazing. But you know, are we being put under a spell? Right? If we're gonna watch this. If we're gonna deal with linguistics, the Hebrew word for mirror is the same Hebrew word for mirage. In other words, when these entities manifest, all they have to do is mirror our belief system. That's how they've been operating throughout millennia. If you want them to be a demon, they'll play that role. You know, they'll come out there with horns and hooves. If you want them to be Aunt Edna, they'll appear as Aunt Edna. Whatever they have to do to hide. That's why we got to quit looking for linguistics and names. I mean, obviously we're going to research that stuff, but at the end of the day, we've got to follow their footfall until we see their behavioral patterns, because they may change what they smell like. They may change their names. They may change their appearances. But my God, their behavioral patterns have been witnessed throughout millennia. And it's irrefutable at this point.
Yeah, James Hadaway says, it is draining. It is facing titans.
God.
It is traveling to space in meditation. All the things we've been brought up to ignore. It's good filling the gaps. It's sad we are not consciously free.
Exactly. And it's a deep subject. It's a troubling subject. You know, I mean, if we even get back into like Betty Luca was told by these entities that her kids were going to die. We don't want to talk about that in the field. This is why they're doctoring the stinking data. They don't want to talk about that, right? They want to ignore it and get all, what I don't know, bubblicious and balloons and rainbows and you know, be all cuddly and love and light. No, Betty Luca was told, your kids, there's somebody that's going to die. She went to Ray Fowler, freaking out, told Ray, there's something bad going to happen to me. And guess what? You know, she lost somebody in her family. Even more than that, they had a cat that had died, guys. They had a cat that died. They buried the cat. Next thing you know, the cat walks up to them, alive. They have power over the soul.
Yeah, Vash actually asked a good question here. He says,
Yeah.
Can pets help warn or ward off these entities?
We have no evidence of that. We do have evidence that the pets can see them when we can't. I mean, even if you get into the literature of hauntology, you know, apparitions and stuff where they would see these entities and we wouldn't necessarily see them until they did. So they would react to these entities. But guys, I mean, like we're literally talking about a species that can walk right into your house without your permission, press pause on everybody you love, and steal you out of your own body. They did that.
Yeah,
Betty Luca watched how they put her entire family on pause. Like this is almost like somebody has hacked the matrix here, and we're being played with in some weird way.
All right, man. Well,
I hope I did a good job at least explaining some of my theories here, man.
you know what another thing too is you gotta. It's funny how a lot of the, should I say, mainstream churches, won't really tell the truth anymore about anything.
You're right. They don't. A lot of them are dogmatic, and I really, I grew up as like an evangelical. But I don't even really believe in the evangelical version of this phenomenon either. There's a lot of researchers out there that, they focus on the fact that these entities were giants at one time. None of them are really thinking about how these entities were harvesting souls. Yahweh said that. Yahweh says, those of you who hunt the souls of men to make them fly. I mean, how much clearer can it get, right? This is literally like we're stepping into the 21st century version of UFO abduction. But he wrote that, the prophet wrote that thousands of years ago. So they've been present. And the scary thing is we don't know where we are in the food chain. We don't know where we are as a species. What we do know for sure is that they are accessing our potentialities here. They're picking us apart in places we don't even know exist yet.
Yeah, they sure are. Mark Nash says, I'm going to go ahead and just read this because it's interesting.
Yeah.
He says, I hear an old wives' tale. If you think a dog is looking at a spirit, get behind it and look between its ears, and you will be able to see it too. So that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. Yeah,
All right, man. Do you know who Corn Pop is?
We did this last time. I have no idea. I don't know.
Corn Pop is a bad dude, man.
Okay.
He's a bad dude. We always ask that question. Maybe next time you'll get it. Remember. You have to go on Google and say, who is Corn Pop?
I will.
James Hadaway says we can only free ourselves by letting go collectively, and some won't. And when we are honest, we have all made wrong karma choices without knowing or having mindfulness create our own strength and magic. And on that note, Nathaniel, why don't you tell everybody where they can find you?
So, all right. So my social media accounts, I'm on Facebook and I'm on Instagram. I'm underneath the Nathaniel Gillis. You can find me on, like I said, Facebook and Instagram. I usually update my Instagram a lot more than I do my Facebook page. Anytime I get new research or a new thought, I try to put it out on Instagram. You know, I get a lot of responses from that, and a lot of people follow me on that particular app. But that's how to find me, guys. And it's just, you know, it's a humbling, it's an honor to be with you all. And I hope that I at least made some sense. I'm not saying, you know, that I'm not going to grow into new dimensions of thought. What I'm saying is, as a researcher, this is where we are right now in the field.
Yeah. Any advice to ufologists out there as to, you know, what they're doing wrong?
Well, I love ufology, and I love ufologists, you know, and they look at me and say, you know, you're a demonologist, and they kind of frown on that discipline. I would suggest that they remove the dogma from the data, go through history, and forget the fact that evangelicalism called them demons. That's a title, right? Look at the data for what they've done. And once you get those cases underneath your belt and you start to see, hey, listen, they've been here for a long time, then you have greater access to case studies here that will help us put pieces to the picture.
All right. And everybody, Nathaniel's information is down in the description box below with the link to his Facebook. I don't think I put the link to your Instagram down there. But
That's all good.
you can post the link on your Facebook page, I suppose, and then everybody can click on that link and go over and check it out. All right, man.
That's
well,
fine, guys.
Hang on a minute. Let me wrap this up. And guys, we will be back. Just so everybody knows, if anybody is listening to this on Apple iTunes, we are live this Monday, and I'm looking at the calendar here. We're going to be live Monday and Thursday at 7:30 Eastern Time here on Conflict Radio official YouTube channel. So make sure you check us out if you want to participate in the live stream and the call-ins and question times and all that kind of stuff. Remember, you can always find us online at www.conflictradio.net. You can find us on Spreaker, Apple iTunes, and all of your normal podcast catchers. Really do appreciate all the support, guys, all the super chats and super stickers and all of that good stuff that comes in. Make sure you check out our store. It's getting cold out there, guys. Grab those hoodies, man. They're pretty freaking awesome. Until tomorrow, we'll be back tomorrow. Batten down the hatches and be safe.